This week on Government Matters.
They're trying to get them the kind of information that we're used to getting on our smartphones, but at the tactical edge.
Apps in the battlefield. The U.S. Army wants to usher in an era of immediate digital exchange.
It can also help the procurer or someone who's buying a product to actually look for products today that have some kind of modicum of foundation of security that has been addressed.
A safety standards organization wants the U.S. to be ready for the Internet of Things. We detail the Cyber Assurance Program.
It missed the mark, so we're glad they came back and recognized that there was a better way of doing business.
The Pentagon's Employee Appraisal Program gets a makeover. Supporters say it's long overdue. Government Matters starts right now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
To our viewers around the world on the American Forces Network and here in the nation's capital, thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every week we'll bring you the top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. Last year, there were nearly 2,500 reports of ransomware hackings, with a total reported loss of more than $24 million. This year, ransomware is on pace to do even more damage. It hits people where it hurts, locking them out of files, photos, and critical records until they pay hackers a bounty to restore access. Drew Griffin has this special report.
It popped up on a computer screen, then two, then dozens. This note filling and freezing the screens of hundreds of computers in the Horry County, South Carolina School District. The school's technology director, Charles Hucks, knew immediately his system was under attack.
Your computer systems were basically held ransom.
Correct. Our data was held ransom.
Your data was held ransom.
Correct.
By this note.
That's correct.
And they said, hey, you want to free your data?
Pay us.
Most people would think a school system gets basically its computer system hijacked. The data is being held for ransom. Hijacked, ransom, cops. You would call some kind of authority to come in and take care of this, right?
Correct. So we did notify the FBI. We notified SLED, which is our state law enforcement group.
What did they say?
They said, thank you for letting us know. And then this is the site that they set up for us to communicate.
With law enforcement powerless to stop it, the Horry County schools did the only thing they could to get their data freed. They paid.
So you get to the point of making the business decision. Do I make my end users, in our case teachers and students, wait for weeks and weeks and weeks while we restore hundreds of servers from backup, or do we pay the ransom and get the data back online more quickly?
Earlier this year, this hospital in California found its computer systems frozen, held for ransom. The ransom, more than $16,000.
It is a very bad trend that's been rising for the last few years.
Adam Kajawa works for a Silicon Valley company trying to fight what the industry has dubbed ransomware.
It's the one that we hear about the most, and it's the one we see people asking for help the most. And unfortunately, this isn't the kind of attack that you can get infected with and then remove it and you're done. There's no quick fix.
Kidnappers demand the ransom paid in bitcoins, the anonymous internet currency that can't be traced. What's also hard to trace is where the ransomware virus is coming from, usually accidentally installed by unwitting users tricked into opening up its digital poison.
Maybe it's a picture that you thought that you were getting from one of your co-employees, and you just innocently don't read it thoroughly, and you click on it, and all of a sudden now you're infected with this.
You haven't heard about it because most companies pay to keep things quiet. Horry County schools decided not to keep silent to help others avoid being taken.
Yes, and we're not alone. And one of the reasons that we have been talking about this is that this is very, very common. We know of several other school districts, some other school districts where this has happened, and they've been able to keep it out of the news, which is great for them.
In the end, like dealing with real kidnappers, the school set up a money drop, a Bitcoin account, and sent the kidnappers just enough ransom to free one computer to make sure the kidnappers' code would work.
Which it did, and then we said, okay, it works, we want to pay the balance, and so we paid the balance.
The full ransom, $10,000. Horry County's computers are now freed, and the ransomware pirates continue to sail freely and, for now, unstoppable through the world's computer systems, searching for their next hostage.
Drew Griffin. In February of 2013, President Obama announced an executive order that directed NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, to develop a voluntary framework for reducing cyber risks to critical infrastructure. NIST delivered the first version of those standards in 2014. Today, they affect everything from the security of financial data to the cost of cyber insurance for large corporations. This week, NIST brought a group of cyber professionals together to gather intel for the next iteration. Our Diane Cho was there.
The latest cyber attacks grabbing headlines across the country aren't focused on retailers. The threat seems much broader now, with schools and hospitals becoming targets. A malware attack shut down MedStar's computer network just last week. The National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework is designed to help organizations strengthen their security and prevent these types of attacks.
You have to assume that A, someone's going to be coming after you, and B, that they're likely to have some level of success. And the most important thing is to have enough layers of defense in place that you mitigate what they can do.
According to research company Gartner, 30% of organizations here in the U.S. are currently using the NIST framework. That number is expected to jump to 50% by 2020. This week, NIST hosted a workshop with more than 1,000 people to find out how to move forward.
A lot of the responses are basically saying that the framework is being used. It's being used in organizations beyond critical infrastructure, which was the original intent. Still a lot of challenges around things like workforce and supply chain, also authentication, those sorts of issues.
Cost also appears to be a limiting factor. Tenable Network Security says 70% of respondents consider the framework to be an industry best practice, but more than half of current and future adopters admit the level of investment needed to fully conform with the framework is high.
The cost of a breach in particular hasn't been factored enough into the risk management calculation. So when you run the numbers, you end up with a lower investment as necessary. And it's still too often seen as well, that happened to someone else. You know, it might happen to us, but we'll roll the dice.
Ari Schwartz was a member of the White House National Security Council and helped implement the framework after the president issued an executive order in 2013. He's now in industry working for Venable.
I think we have to be able to learn the new pieces and have ways for it to be able to adapt a little more quickly, because you do have new threats that come in, and things are not going to stay the same over time. It's sort of built with some flexibility in, but there needs to have some process to be able to make sure that we're updating it regularly.
NIST is trying to find ways on how to keep pace with the needs of the private sector as it tries to figure out if it's time for an update. For Government Matters, I'm Diane Cho.
In tech matters, apps in the battlefield. Today, smartphone users can access a staggering amount of data on a variety of specialized subjects simply by tapping an app. The apps also collect data from users themselves. Now, the U.S. Army wants to replicate and modify that digital exchange for the military. Joining me with more is Amber Corrin, senior reporter for C4ISR Networks. Amber, there's new focus on apps inside the Army's Communications Electronics Research Development and Engineering Center, or CERDEC. Why? Tell us more.
It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
CERDEC's much easier.
Yeah.
So the CERDEC is doing a lot of really innovative, interesting research into ways that they can field apps to the tactical edge, to these austere environments, to troops who are dismounted. They're not connected to no broadband, no 4G. So they're trying to get them the kind of information that we're used to getting on our smartphones, but at the tactical edge, and get access to that data, actionable intelligence information that can help them make better decisions.
It's not as if soldiers can just log into iTunes or Google Play and download a battle app. Technically speaking, how does this work?
Well, they have demonstrated sort of like an Army app store specifically for the tactical edge. That's not up and running yet. Over here stateside, the Defense Information Systems Agency has its own app store. Either they have up and running, I think they have it up and running at this point, so military users can purchase apps through there. So they're working on getting kind of a storefront interface where they'll be able to download these onto their devices.
All right, so they're laying the groundwork, but has the Army actually put any of these apps into the field?
They actually have. The Net Warrior system is kind of like a situational awareness communication system, but it just looks like a regular smart device, often a tablet or one of the larger smartphones. So they have fielded some apps through there, and they also do some things over radio, believe it or not, they do.
Now, what about the future of this technology? Where does the Army want to go? I mean, the sky's the limit, it sounds like.
Literally, the sky is the limit. They want to try to be able to link the apps on your smart device to control drones or unmanned aerial vehicles. Or unmanned vehicles of any sort, to manage swarms of robots potentially. They're talking about developing apps that kind of act like a digital assistant in the field, kind of like a Siri for the commander, if you will, while they're out in the Humvee. They want to do voice command kind of stuff, so when you're riding in a Stryker vehicle, you don't necessarily want to touch the screen, mess anything up. You want to be able to just issue a voice command and it follows through. So those are all things that are in the works to varying degrees of completeness right now.
That's very risky, though. You could say launch and the voice could say, here's where you find lunch. So, I mean, you got a lot of problems here. What about the impact of electronic warfare? What are the risks here?
Electronic warfare has a couple different interesting points here. GPS denied environments is a big problem. That's another reason that they want to be able to field these tactical apps. One of the apps that I didn't mention is one that uses sensors to give you guidance in GPS denied environments. So they use sensors to kind of sense where you are, give you a better idea. Not quite as accurate as GPS, but better than having nothing at all. So that's a big part there, as we're entering more and more of these environments where the adversary can use jamming as a form of electronic warfare to deny GPS access. In the military, we've also seen less investment in electronic warfare in recent years as there's been more focus on cyber. And I've heard quite a few high-level military leaders talk about that recently. So I think they're taking a second look at that, especially as we change environments, we change adversaries, we don't know who's coming up next and what capabilities they might have.
It's all bound to happen with all of these apps coming online. Amber Corrin, senior reporter with C4ISR Networks. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Every year, retailers sell billions of new devices that connect to the internet. But how do buyers know they're secure? A safety standards organization says their step of approval will help. We talk to Underwriters Laboratories next on Government Matters. In Security Matters, the Cyber Assurance Program. According to Gartner, there will be as many as 50 billion connected devices by 2020. The list includes industrial control systems, medical devices, automobiles, and consumer electronics. Nothing is hack-proof. IDC research reports 2 in 3 networks will have an Internet of Things security breach within the next 2 years. Those are pretty scary numbers. Now, a safety standards organization wants to help. Here to explain is Ken Modeste, leader for Cybersecurity Technical Services at Underwriters Laboratories. He joins us via Skype from Northbrook, Illinois. Ken, before we get into the Cybersecurity Assurance Program, give us some background. What is Underwriters Laboratories? What kind of work do you do?
UL is the acronym for our company, and Underwriters Laboratories is an organization that has been working for 100+ years on providing services for the community in a safe working and living environment. And so we basically have been doing for 100 years, helping organizations and vendors and manufacturers test products and develop products from a safe perspective. And now we're expanding that model into security, because security is obviously starting to affect the safety and performance of products today.
I think that's a great idea. We take it for granted, but we see the UL logo on almost everything electronic these days. And this week, you rolled out UL CAP, a series of standards to offer testable cybersecurity criteria for network-connectable products and systems. Tell me more.
Yeah, it's a program we started working on about a couple of years ago. For about 10 years now, a lot of our vendors who we've been helping with addressing their risks around safety have been looking at security as a challenge for their safety issues. And so we've started developing technical criteria to provide repeatable and reproducible ability to evaluate and assess a product from a security perspective, so that we could provide a holistic approach to help a vendor and a manufacturer address some of their security risks as they build their products. And it can also help the procurer or someone who's buying a product to actually look for products today that have some kind of modicum or foundation of security that has been addressed.
Ken, what do these standards have to do with President Obama's Cybersecurity National Action Plan?
Yes, that's a great question. He actually mentioned us in February 9th at his executive order for that National Action Plan. And we've been working primarily with the Department of Homeland Security, where they asked us if we can support them in developing a voluntary program. A trusted independent third party like UL can help them develop a voluntary program that we could actually evaluate and test the software supply chain that exists today in products. The majority of risks that exist today from a security perspective is really associated with software. So we've been working with the Department of Homeland Security to develop this type of program. And so that's what President Obama mentioned in the February 9th executive order.
So if I'm an IT purchaser and I see the new UL certification on a connected device, what does that mean? Is it like the USDA organic label on items at the grocery store?
What it means is that the product has gone through some foundational testing to address some of the common risks that are associated with software today in products. And it looks at addressing those risks, and the vendor has done due diligence in addressing those risks and have provided mitigation strategies for addressing them. And so that program today, if you see a UL certificate associated with the product, it means that that vendor has done some of that due diligence that is associated with that program.
Now, earlier, I mentioned the sheer volume of connected devices. Gartner expects as many as 50 billion by 2020. Today, the UL certification is voluntary, and it will cost companies for UL testing. That means some companies will skip it and pass the cyber risks along to consumers. So I'm curious, Ken, does Congress need to step in here? Does the U.S. need a legal baseline for cybersecurity or connected devices?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think really the ones who would drive Congress to do that are the people like you and I who actually purchase products. What UL will offer today is UL will offer an opportunity for industry and manufacturers and vendors to voluntarily support this program. And we will work with them to address their risk. But obviously, as the public looks at how they would address safety and security, it's up to them to contact Congress and make decisions on where they see programs and where it should be supported.
It's a great topic. We're on the cutting edge. Ken Modeste, leader for Cybersecurity Technical Services at Underwriters Laboratories. Thanks, Ken, and good luck.
Thank you for having me.
In Management Matters, the Pentagon's Employee Appraisal Program. This month, the Defense Department, the largest federal employer, started rolling out a new appraisal system for all civilian employees. The Washington Post reports Stage 1 involves 15,000 workers. 2 years from now, it will cover a large majority of DoD's 750,000 civilian employees. For more, I'm joined by Pete Randazzo, president of the National Federation of Federal Employees, Local 1690 at the Naval Postgraduate School. He joins us via Skype from Monterey, California. Pete, this appraisal program didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years of work by Congress, Pentagon officials, and labor leaders like you. The last time DoD tried to overhaul its personnel management system, George W. Bush was president. You called his administration's national security personnel system a complete disaster. Tell us about it.
Well, actually, that was a quote from another labor person, but yeah, it certainly wasn't inclusive of labor. It didn't get the perspectives needed, and it missed the mark. So we're glad they came back and recognized that there was a better way of doing business.
All right, so this month, DoD will start deploying a new appraisal system. Break it down for us. How will it work?
Well, it's not the technical components of this appraisal system that we're excited about. It's really more of working on the culture of DoD, the relationship, really re-engaging the workforce. So the technical components, it's a 3-tier rating system, but we're really looking for that employee recognition throughout the year.
Now, Pete, it's also part of a larger push at the Pentagon called New Beginnings. Define that for us.
Well, that was the brainchild behind this, John James. That was his vision, and you know, and it is. We need a new beginning. You know, currently there's people in the administration that are always seeking newer, smarter people out there to come into government, and I think we have the workforce we need. We just have to invest in them, and I think that's part of New Beginnings, is recognizing that it can't just be business as usual. We've got a big challenge in front of us here.
And how do labor leaders view this effort, and where do you see room for improvement?
Well, you know, when labor works with management, you're going to have a great product. Now, the process was fantastic. I mean, we've got two things going on today. We have the product that we're looking at, but everybody's in complete agreement that the process here really worked with labor and management sitting alongside of each other and sharing ideas and their interests. And most of the time we agreed. When we got down to how to do it, there were certainly some challenges.
Now, Pete, let's step away from DoD for a minute for a look at the big picture. Are there any lessons here for civilian agencies?
You know, actually, we tried to get our lessons from some of the civilian agencies that did things better, the successful companies out there that had employees wanting to come to work for them and having successful recruitment and retention programs out there. So we looked at private industry for sure.
All right, good luck moving forward. Pete Randazzo via Skype from Monterey, California. Thanks again, Pete.
Thank you.
We'll turn from management to final matters straight ahead. Our congratulations now to NextGov's senior correspondent, Aaliyah Sternstein. This month, she won a 2016 Jesse H. Neal Award for her coverage of the Office of Personnel Management hack. The awards are known as the Pulitzer Prize of Business Media. And that's the latest from Washington. Thanks for being with us. I'm Morris Jones. We know your week is filled with other matters. Save this half hour for us.